Today, I have with me Matt DiFrancesco. We met this past summer at an exit planning conference, and that I was invited to from a dear friend of mine who's an attorney that specializes in that space. My first time into that world, and Matt has been in that world for a long time. He will tell us about his experiences in a moment, but I love that not only is he a certified exit planner, and we can talk a little bit about what that is, but today's conversation, hang tight. We're actually going to be talking about things I normally talk about, or at least that category of personal development and enriching your life. But I love that, Matt, you describe yourself as a financial technician, and I think that's a
Yes.
cool thing. And it also ties in with your niche, which we can talk about more too. But he is truly dedicated to aligning families and businesses to create multi-generational wealth. And specifically his niche, this was what was really fascinating to me too, when we first met, because it's not something you hear every day. He literally specializes in helping auto collision shop owners. So people who own collision shops, that's his primary client for the most part. And that's so calling yourself a financial technician, I see the play on words there a little bit. And
Right.
the name of your business, High Lift Financial. Get it, car people out
Mhm.
there. High lift, like lifting your car. And
Mhm.
so some fun play on words that you've done with marketing and things, which I love.
Mhm.
You are also the host of the podcast, Your Business, Your Life, which I had the pleasure of being on
Mhm.
recently. And he also is married with 4 children, all boys. So we'll hear all about this in a minute. But
Mhm.
he had me on his podcast, and we had such a great time talking. We certainly did not have um, any issue of talking and going on about all sorts of things in the personal development world. That it turned into a 2 episode thing on his podcast, my interview over there, which I am so appreciative for, and so happy to have you over here because it was so
Mhm.
easy to talk with you, so fun. He's a self-proclaimed personal development junkie. So, Matt,
Mhm.
welcome to Charis Your Life, and let me know, whatever you feel like responding to out of everything I just tossed out there.
No, I think you explained it great, Charis, and I'm excited to be on with you. I know we had a lot of fun on ours, and I think the topic of personal development is something that most people and especially business owners kind of glance over. And I think it's really important. And that's one of the things I'm hoping we get to talk about is the importance of always working on yourself.
Yes, yes, yes. I know it is so important to you. You've had a coach in your life.
Mhm.
For how many years?
13 years I've been working with
13
him.
years. Okay.
Yep.
And did you have a coach prior to that?
I wouldn't say a coach. I've had mentors that have helped me in the business and in just my personal development. But no, just a formal coaching is really just that's I've been in the last 13 years.
Okay. And what sparked you to get that coach initially? And I know from what you shared with me before, you can talk a little bit about this now, maybe. It's a combo for you of business and personal, I believe. So talk a little bit about like what sparked it and what kinds of things you cover.
Well, if I could just give you a little bit of background,
Yeah.
because I think that kind of tees it up. I got into financial service. I've done a variety of things. I was an English lit major coming out of college, and so didn't really have a lot of job prospects. Actually, bounced right. There was a ski bum for a while. Worked in data processing and for a mutual fund company. Came back, was a professional photographer for 4 years. Then got into selling welding alloys. Then worked for a Fortune 500 company, and then always had kind of this entrepreneurial spark. So I ended up getting into financial services 18 years ago. And at the time, I didn't have access to any money. It was all just no rich family members, no rich friends, anything like that. So it was basically just grinding it out. And I started, I was building my business and I kind of hit a plateau. And I knew that it wasn't going to be sustainable and I knew I needed some help. So it just happened that the firm I was with at the time offered this business mastery seminar with Coach Joe. And so it was $500. I'm like, okay, I can spend $500. So I did that, went to Dallas, sat down with him, and I thought I was going to learn a lot of like practice management skills, time management, those type of things. And really what resonated with me is he started talking about mindset. And he used to work back in his previous life with the Tony Robbins organization, selling their programs, and then got into kind of broke out on his own and started coaching financial advisors. But this whole idea of mindset, I really started to realize that the thing that was holding me back was not my abilities, but it was how I thought. Okay. So that's how I ended up hiring him, was really more about getting my mind right, and then being able to build the practice management skills that I needed. So, and that's one thing I've learned is that if and this is really for any entrepreneur that's out there, if you don't get your head right, you're never gonna fulfill what you can really fulfill, and you can never really kind of control your own destiny to a certain extent.
Did you find there were certain themes or recurring stories, that you would play out that were not serving you, that were kind of your sabotaging stories or voices or common ways of being?
Oh, definitely. I think first off, and if you look at kind of the circle of what our mindset is life, the first set is what are our beliefs. So how do we define this? How do we complete the sentence I am, or people are, or life is, or business is? If we say, for example, I am not capable. Okay, I am a fraud. I'm an imposter. If that's the dialogue that we have in our head, we're never going to get to where we want to go. Similarly, if we say that, life is tough, life is hard, again, we're kind of setting ourselves up for failure. Business is hard. Business is difficult to build. Business is, it's hard to find the right people or the right clients or customers, those type of things. All of these are going to weigh us down and cause us to bottleneck and to almost stop moving. We become demotivated. So I think that's the first area, is in our belief systems. The second is what our internal dialogue is. What are we saying to ourselves every day? And most people, I find, have terrible self dialogue. I mean, I preach to my kids all the time when they say, "Oh, I'm not good at this." You never say that. All right. I'm always willing to try. I'm always willing to get better. All right. That's the kind of self-talk we need to have. Our identity, what we see in the mirror. I think that's a huge thing. If we're getting up in the morning and we're looking in the mirror and we see somebody that's, 20, 30, 40 pounds overweight, that's looks tired, that's going to reflect in how we interact with people. So all these areas I think are critical, because again, if we don't get our mindsets right, and especially first off, these images, our belief systems, our values is a huge one. And values, I define as really emotions, and we have emotions that we want to move toward and emotions that we want to move away from. So for example, let's say your moving forward value is love. Okay, that's something that you want to feel. But all of a sudden, with those values, there are rules that happen that basically will trigger that emotion. And if we have a lot of rules, like I have to, and my wife always has to tell me she loves me, and I need people to always be appreciating me, and I've got all these rules that are stacked up, it makes it really hard for us to trigger those emotions. All right. Similarly, if, especially in the business world or in the sales world, if one of your moving away values you don't want to feel is rejection, which is a big one, but it's really easy. If somebody says no, or if somebody says, I think about it, well, that's really easy to trigger. And again, if it's easy to trigger, then what do? We avoid taking action because we don't want to feel that emotion. So again, what we have to do with the emotions is redefine. We can't redefine the emotions that we want to feel, but we can change the rules that we want to that cause that. So it was funny. I just came out of my business planning conference last week, and my coach, and this is every year, we spend a whole day just on mindset and kind of identifying where's your current mindset, and then how are we going to reframe it. So I remember doing this, and like one of my moving forward toward values was love. Okay. And I had all these rules, and we worked and worked, and I finally got it down to is I love when I love others. Now I'm fully in control of that rule, and it's very easy for me to feel that emotion. Similarly, rejection, where, it's like, oh, I'll think about it. Somebody says no. Now I have to say, somebody has to tell me, I never want to see you again. Get off my face, give me my file. And then they talk badly about my mother. Those have to trigger for me to feel rejection. So now, even when I get a no, that to me, that's just like, not yet. Maybe the timing's not right. So I think those 4 areas are really critical for us to be able to get control of, so that we can move forward and become the best version of ourselves.
That's that's awesome. Um the way that I talk about some of that when I'm working with clients or even myself or in my programs and things is around the expectations we put on ourselves or
Mhm.
others.
Right.
Um, or also then excuses too that come into play again, for why we are or not feeling a certain way or achieving a certain thing we want or whatever. But usually
Right.
it's all tied in with emotions. You're absolutely right, because heck, even the reason we go after something is to feel a certain way. Like the
Right.
reason you want the car or the reason you want the house or the reason you want a relationship or the reason you want a certain meal, anything, is because it makes you feel a certain feeling that you are desiring. That's
Right.
ultimately the feelings are really all about it. And those expectations and and as you in your language putting it into the rules and catching them is so important. I have a whole module on catching all this kind of stuff, because it's like,
Right.
if you can't become aware of this, then you can't stop it. You can't
Yes.
stop it and replace it. And like you said, you did a powerful reframe where
Hmm.
you were like, where am I actually in control of this? So something that we talk about is uh, flipping one of these expectations or rules or conditions into an intention of a way of being that, just like you did, how can I be that will model out there what I want, possibly attract what I want, because like attracts like. Whatever you believe in spiritually could come into play here too. If you believe in law of attraction or just anything like that, as far as just if I want a more loving relationship, then I can have an intention to practice being more loving in all of my
Hmm.
current relationships and in every like in all my relationships, period, whether they're
Right.
new or old. And then that will actually make me possibly attract that kind of relationship back to me. And I think that's I mean, I think I'm paraphrasing it differently just in my own words what you said, but I'd
Mhm.
love to hear your, if that's how you see it too, that you're taking you're figuring out, well, I have control over me. Therefore, if I act this way, I'm going to put myself out. Again, you can think of it as magnetic, you can think of it as energy, you can think of it as however you want, but you're going to become suddenly more open to having that thing come into you that you want to feel.
Yes, yeah, the change has to happen from within. And I think what you're saying is very true. I think of now, like, so my faith is very important to me, and I look at the life of especially like the early Christians. Okay, that think about this: the early Christian community was under assault first by the Jewish community and then by the Romans. All right, and they were subject to death, and yet these people, because they had been transformed on the inside, all right, kept living this life. And the thing about, when you look at that, and all of a sudden all these people are converting to Christianity. Why was it? Because they were living differently than the rest of the world. And it became something, they were living differently in a way that was very attractive to people. They were taking care of the poor, not only of their own, but of, all these other societies. So again, the transformation has to come from the inside. Really, we're not going to, and you can't, I mean, to a certain extent, you can fake it till you make it. All right. But if we still have got mental garbage that's sitting in here, as my coach calls it, head trash. Okay. And if we've got that head trash, it's going to reflect in whatever we do. And I think that's really where the heavy lifting has to come in is how do we get rid of all the garbage that's in our head? All right. And reframe ourselves to see ourselves as we truly are. I mean, does
Yeah.
that make sense? Or you see what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. No, it does. And I think that you commented on you can kind of fake it till you make it, and we're talking here literally about like how you live in the world, not
Correct.
necessarily. So uh, I think that can if you don't know what else to do, at least that can maybe get your toe in the door for
Right.
finding the momentum of the shift you need internally. But if you don't
Right.
really dig in, if you don't really dig in and open it up and be like, okay, let's look at the thoughts, let's look at the feelings. Like I'm feeling this way right now. What the heck does, what do I need? What do I need right now to
Right.
shift this?
Hmm.
And let's acknowledge that I even feel this way and it's not wrong or bad. But
Right.
until we're willing to be more aware of our own inner everything that is like, I mean, it's like a little universe all in there sometimes.
Right. Oh,
I mean,
oh, exactly. I don't know if you ever read Stephen Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Effective
mm-hmm,
People. And Covey hits the nail on the head because in the first part of the book, he talks about kind of the history of the um, self-help genre that was out there. And it's interesting because he talks about in really as we see a lot of the self-help material that's out there in the last 150 years, 175 years, it's really about technique. Okay. And we can do this thing. And if you do these techniques, here's how we can reprogram our minds and our self-talk. But if you look at prior to that period, 175 years before and going back the whole way, I mean, you could go back to the ancient Greeks. It was really about building your character. It was about this idea that we're just talking about is you got to change internally. And that was Covey's point in all of this, is that until we change our character, okay, all of the techniques in the world aren't going to work. And so that's really the premise of the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the things that he has you do at the end of the book is to write your own personal mission statement. And it takes some self exploration. It takes some time. We have to really determine what do we love and what do we want to become. All right. And then writing this mission statement that we read over and over every day. And it's interesting. There's a lot of those different personality profiles that were out there. And,
mm-hmm,
and I got involved like about 30 years ago into the network marketing business. And one of the things that they were really good at was this idea of personal development. So this is how I kind of became a personal development junkie. But I remember when the disc profile came out
mm-hmm.
and it was introduced to us. So my wife and I had just got married, and we did the disc profiles and find out how we were wired. Um, this is years later. It was right as I was kind of leaving corporate America, and I was looking at businesses to get into. And I was talking to a company that that did business coaching, and the guy had me do the disc profile. And so it was funny. So I took the test again, and we were reviewing, and it was funny because my scores had changed. So, I had my D had really come up, and so had my C, and my S, which is still my high, or my no my S, my I, which is still the highest, came down a little bit. I became much more balanced, and I was telling the guy, "Boy, this is really intriguing. I mean, why do you think that is?" He goes, "Well, Matt," he goes, "you spent all these years in personal development." He goes, "You rewired your brain." And we can do that. And I think that's one of the big things that people don't understand is that we can rewire how we think, okay,
Mm-hmm.
to become that best version of ourselves, but we have to put the effort in. And again, I think in a lot of cases we need guidance. I mean, I needed my coach. Your clients need you because it helps when there's somebody there kind of holding our hand and walking us through the process, and also helping us to understand where our deficiencies are, even in language. Like sometimes, I'll be doing my coaching call and I'll say, well, I'm going to try this. And he's always like, nope, let's reframe that. Don't try. Right. So again, that's what's really helpful is again having that third party or that outside person, all right, that can kind of look. They're not in the battle. They're not they're in the battle, but they're above the smoke of the battle. Kind of like I always talk about the generals in the Revolutionary War times or the Civil War, where the generals were always on the hilltop, not because they didn't want to fight, but they needed to see what was happening so they could direct the troops. But if they were in the middle of the battle, there's too much, gunfire and cannons going off and smoke and everything that you can't see what's happening. So sometimes we need that general per se, all right, to be able to help guide us.
Yep, that's exactly. My tagline is "Owl guide you." Play on, with
Mm-hmm.
the owl in my logo, and literally being a guide. It's so uh, I even just had a new client come on board last week, done a
Mm-hmm.
lot of personal development already. In fact, um, you know, very accomplished in personal development things, and yet I was even in within a couple sentences able to catch some phrasing and words that
Yes.
were like contradictory, just in a like literally said one thing, said another, and I was like, huh. So I poked in on that a little bit. Turned out there was a little thread there throughout the whole call. And he saw it and he took notes and he's like, okay. I said, yeah, you've done a lot. You've done a lot of growth, but it's these nuances that, I mean, I was excited to see what was going to happen because it may seem subtle at first, but it can
Mm,
be super powerful, especially for just
right.
truly affecting how he's feeling. Because if that if conflicting words come up within a few sentences even of a session with someone who has the ear out for them and knows, and is trained in what to listen for and has got that higher perspective and not caught in the weeds, um if they're catching that so fast like I did, it's like,
Hmm.
well, what's going on inside his head? Because
Right.
that is he's got a beautiful life, but I'm excited to see where it can go from here in the what's going on internally, how he's feeling every moment and
Hmm.
every day, because that's really it's the cliche, but it really is about the moment, about the journey. I mean, there is no thing that we're reaching that someday we're going to feel a certain way. We've got to the more we start the sooner we start caring more about how we feel, the sooner we actually put attention and energy into shifting how we feel, getting support to even learn what that even means if we aren't quite sure. And
Right.
the better our lives will feel, and we will get to the end of the line and be like, that was an awesome ride. There will be
Hmm.
many less regrets than if not. I mean, you are continuing with your coach. You attribute
Hmm.
a budget. You have a sizable budget for coaching and the things
Correct.
you do in the personal development world. And to my understanding, you have no desire or, there's no short-term plan to have that stop out of your life. Why is that? Why do you see it continuing to be there?
Because every time when I start investing more into personal development, I see the biggest amounts of growth. Okay. So kind of the rule of thumb, and this is what my coach teaches, and I actually now use this with my clients, is to devote 10%. And I devote 10% of my top line revenue to personal development. The beauty of doing a percentage is that maybe in 1 year, I remember early on where that was like 20 grand. Wow, that can get you to some decent conferences, buy some good books, maybe get, you know, you know, some type of maybe lower level coaching, that kind of stuff. But as your business then begins to grow because you're growing, that budget can then go to $200,000. Well, you can do a hell of a lot with $200,000. I mean, you can hire, some of the best coaches in the world who are costing 100 grand a year, or some of the best conferences that are out there. So, and we're always evolving. That's the biggest thing. We always have to be evolving because the world, there's so much noise that's out there. Okay. I always, it's actually funny being in financial services, and it blows my mind because uh, you look at financial advisors, and I know a lot of them who are making strong 6 figures, 7 figures, some of them up into 8 figures in income, who think of themselves as complete failures. And a lot of it is because in the financial service world, you kind of get in, all right. And your first like big bogey is to do $250,000 in revenue. So you're working, and all of a sudden you hit this, and you're like, "Yes, I did it." And then what's your branch manager say? "Hey, that's great. You know what? This guy over here is doing 500,000." And you're like, oh, okay. So you start working and working, and then you get to 500,000. And then branch manager says, yeah, this guy's doing 1 million. And it's just, and it keeps going on and on like that. And the problem is, if we keep chasing that, we're never going to feel fulfilled ourselves. And maybe we start chasing money that's not always the most important thing to us. Okay. So, and I see this in the collision space all the time. It's really amazing the parallels between the two, because a lot of these guys are really successful, but there's kind of a mindset out there that because they work on cars. All right. I mean, one of my big clients, and he's been in the collision business for 30 years and he's ultra successful. And we were having lunch the other day and he was telling me, because we were talking about this whole concept. And he said, yeah, he goes, I remember when I decided to study auto body repair, and my parents saying, why do you want to be a grease monkey? Right? Now think about that. That sticks in his head. Right? And so, and I think it sticks in a lot of these guys' heads. So, they have kind of this poor self-image because of what people, how people define them. And yet they're some of the most successful people probably in their communities. So that's why having continual personal development, because if we stop, all of a sudden this garbage is going to keep sneaking in. And I remember years ago, a mentor of mine saying, for every negative thought that you have, you need 3 positive thoughts to overcome that.
Yeah,
So
we have that negativity bias. Literally, our brain has the negativity bias,
yeah,
which served us really well when our lives were simpler. And it was, if there was something negative, it was because it could, harm our life,
oh yeah, right,
take
right,
our life, right? When,
yep,
pre-modern times. But now that negativity bias can be very detrimental to us, and it
yeah,
requires a lot of effort and intention
right,
to go against it, just like you said, the 3 times. And that's interesting what you said about your clients and that concept. I mean, I think as a whole, we could say, especially our American culture, rewards the hard work, rewards the thing, but only for the minutia moment. And then it's like, oh, but you can go more. Oh, but you can
yeah,
do better. Oh, but there's other people out there to compare yourself to, and we're going to compare
mhm,
you for you if you do it yourself. So yeah, more, 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 more. And it's never enough, ever.
right,
And then you add on to that different people with their backgrounds, whether it be in your niche and a common kind of a thought out there that's put on them, or that they have themselves, a belief
mhm,
about it being sort of a lower bad thing, sort of a negative, lower uh, career, and
mhm,
the irony of that, because they're doing really well and yet they can't embrace that feeling and acknowledge themselves for that. And I think, and then other people that have just various things that have happened in their lives, that one thing is told to them that sticks. And then again, you
right,
got the culture, the society that is encouraging this chasing, and it's never enough. And then we're in a big pickle until we slow down, stop the train,
mhm,
and like realize, okay, I'm safe, first of all.
right,
And secondly, do I really want the things I'm going after? Am I even enjoying the experience? Or like, I did a podcast a month or two ago. It was my magical 6-month question, because this is,
yeah,
I've actually used this when a big decision, but I remind myself of it many times too. Basically, it's like fast forward 6 months down the road. And let's just say that's the end of my road, at least in this
right,
experience. As this human,
mhm,
well, will I have regrets? And so I want to live right now and make some decisions that I wouldn't regret, because I don't, and if I think 6 months, it makes it really, real, really fast.
oh
you
yeah,
know,
right, yeah,
you know, versus five,
you got
10, 20 years. It's easy to be like, oh yeah, yeah. But 6 months is like, well, holy crap, I better make sure I'm
right,
living really intentionally now. So I want to clean that stuff up now. I want to take care of it now. I want to feel better now. I want to change the programming, because I do.
yeah,
I feel like we, like you said, rewire ourselves. We come in and we get programmed, and and then we continue to experience things that program us further into having certain beliefs that really are not supportive in the big scheme of feeling good, satisfied, content, and enjoying our lives, right?
Right. Right. Oh, exactly. I think it's interesting you talk about this because I just finished a book by Pat Lencioni called "The Six Working Geniuses." And well, Lencioni, when he writes, I like the way he writes because basically the first three quarters of the book is a fable explaining kind of his concepts, and then he spends the last quarter of it kind of defining, what how these concepts works. But the whole idea behind the working geniuses is Lencioni has six of them. All right, and it's wonder, ideation, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity. Okay. So, somebody who's wonders is somebody who asks questions all the time. Is there a better way to do this? Or, could we change something that would really affect our growth? Ideation, they're the ideas people. So they're like, hey, yes, what if we did this and this and this and this? The discernment people can take that idea and say, yeah, I think this is a good idea. Or, you know what? I don't know if this is going to be, if this is really going to work. And we might want to rethink how we do this. Your galvanizing people then can rally. They're good at rallying people around the cause and get things moving in motion. Your enablers are the ones that can work the project. And then your people with tenacity are finishers. They're the ones that can see it through to completion. So, Lencioni's premise is that we each have two working geniuses in of these six areas. Two are geniuses, two are competency. So in our genius, that's what kind of the gifts that we were given. That's what we were created to do, and that's where we're most energized. I mean, we just love working in these areas. Our competencies are areas that we can do. Okay. But if we have to do them for too long, it starts to burn us out. And then our frustrations are the things that just really just completely tap us out. Well, part of the problem is that society kind of tells us that we have to be good at all of these things. And if you're not good at every one of them, you're a failure. you know, so what I've learned from this business is that no, it's not about that. It's really about what we need to do is work within our working geniuses and limit our time in the other one as well. Limit our time in our competencies and really find other people or other technologies that can do our frustrations, and we'll live a much more fulfilled life. So that's been a real eye opener to me, and it's funny because I'm reading this in conjunction with the book 10x is easier than
Mm-hmm.
2x by Dan Sullivan
Mm-hmm.
and Dr. Benjamin Hardy, and you're familiar with that.
Yep.
And the premise in that is it's easier to 10x. 2x requires double the effort. 10x requires a whole different mindset, and it's really
Yes.
about. He talks about working in your unique ability, and that's exactly what your working genius is.
Yeah.
So that's really, I think, too many times we're kind of sold that we have to be everything to everybody, and we're not wired that way. But if we can learn and understand what is our true genius, okay, then we can really start to focus our work on those areas that get us the most energized and utilize the gifts that we were given for the greatest impact, and also help others that have the other competencies to uplift their own lives. So it really becomes a win-win.
I love that. And I love how much you are. And I mean, this is an example looking at you have a coach, you go to conferences, and you also are reading books, and in this case,
Right.
multiple at the same time. And that's when I have on my list the 10x and 2x. I've heard many of my mentors talk about it, and so I've got the gist and kind of the Cliff Note version so far. But I look forward to
Right.
reading it myself or listening to it. I'm more of an Audible gal. But the
Yeah.
for those of you listening, well, first of all, there's 2 points I want to mention and see if you agree. First of all, is these like figuring out what is in your genius. And there's also the books, The Genius Zone, and
Yeah.
by, is that, I can't
I
think
don't
of the,
remember.
yeah. Okay. Anyway, another great book. There's two by that author that follow each other. Um, and similar concept of these kind of things of like, of the, he has it into I think three or four, maybe four categories.
Okay.
But the same concept of see what is in your genius and do most of that, kind of the 80/20 rule
Right.
of spend most
Yep.
of your time there. Now, that is, and that's not just in your work. So I think that's important for people to think about, right? Like apply that to your
Oh
whole
yeah.
life. Like apply that to your relationships, to your home. Like, what do you do around the house? What do you, whether or not you do the yard work, or, you know, all of these things, or what part of the yard work do you do? How do you do it? It like
Right.
all of that can be um qualified by your genius. And if you take your genius and apply it to every area of your life, and it's not an overnight thing to figure this out, and I want to
Right.
hesitate to use the phrasing figure out, because then that brings in our brain, the left side of our brain, too much, which I'm all about. This is really tapping into your whole brain and your creativity and your passions and
Hmm.
your what lights you up, which is something that isn't really a figure out thing. It's like a what
Right.
feels good thing, what lights me up thing, what comes easy to me and I enjoy, like, tons. I really it lights me up is the big one I say. So I just want to point out, I believe this is stuff that can be applied to all areas of your life. Do you agree?
Oh yes, very much so. Very much so. I mean, it was interesting after reading Working Geniuses. He actually has assessments, and I'm not there yet, but I was talking to my wife about it. And one thing we figured out, and this is one of our frustrations, is booking vacations, going out to dinner, all those type of things, because you know my wife is probably more wonder and galvanizing. I'm more my working genius is more ideation and discernment. So for example, my wife wants to go, let's say she wants to go to dinner. Um, she got, I wonder where we could go to dinner. And I'd be like, well, you know what? We've wanted to try this place. This might be a good idea. And then I'm thinking, again, discernment. This is a good idea. She's like, yeah, that would be a great idea. But all of us, both of our frustrations are enablement and tenacity. So next thing you know, I'm going, did you book reservations? No, no, no. I thought you were going to book it. And neither one. And I hate doing it. I mean, I literally, because it's my working frustration. Going on vacation, we do the same thing all the time, where it's like, we have these great ideas, but then we never follow through for them, because why? It's not in our working. It's not in our working. It's actually in our frustrations. And so neither one of us want to attack that. So what we're now trying to figure out is, then how do we do this? Do we need to hire a personal assistant
I was just going
to
to say, yeah.
finish the job for us?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see what I
Yeah.
mean?
Which is because, and this is thinking outside the box. And this is what coaching and kind of, and just
Yeah.
you being so open with your mind and caring about all these things and looking into all of this, I believe is part of what's opened you up to even think of that for yourself, because some people wouldn't think of that. But it's like a lot of couples would just get pissed off at each other, right? And just have it be
Right.
like turned into a fight and just a blame game, or well, we never do this because of this, and find how they're the victim, and all of that stuff will come into play.
Hmm.
Where here you're like, okay, we do both get frustrated, and yet we're now trying to sort it out. And hey, one idea is that we hire someone to help us in this part of our
Oh yeah.
personal life. Isn't that I mean, but it's just to show that there's solutions that we can easily dismiss, or just not even, just blinders, because we're so stuck
Hmm.
in a way of thinking, a mindset that is just like, this is the way I am, this is the way she is, we always do this, it's going to forever be this way, this part of our life sucks. I mean, people could go
Right.
there, right?
Exactly. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You better believe it. And I
Yeah.
think they do go there all the time. And we don't understand that each of us has been given unique gifts, but also we have those areas that we're just not good at. And I think we can recognize that and accept that. Now we can start to find the solution that we need.
Or
Okay.
don't enjoy, because sometimes you might, like,
Well, yeah.
you may have the skills to be able to, you each probably have the skills to be able to book the reservation, right?
Oh
But
god,
if
yeah, yeah.
but if it
That's
annoys you every time you have to do it, if shooting off a little message, or just while you're talking, sending a little task to the assistant wouldn't be
right.
annoying, if that wouldn't annoy you, then like then awesome, do that.
Right. Right. And that's where
Yeah.
thinking outside, you got to think outside the box on a lot of these things. If you're having let's say you're suffering from low energy. Well, I think you've got to identify, why is that? All right. Am I not getting enough sleep? Okay. Well, if you're not getting enough sleep, then maybe you have to revamp your schedule to start getting to bed earlier. Okay. Maybe your health isn't that good, and maybe you need to hire a personal trainer or a nutritionist, and these are all part of this personal development budget. Okay. That's the thing that you got to understand. I think that's what the beauty of is having a budget to do this. Is now you can start to identify not only what are the things that I need to be doing, but who are some of the people I need to bring in to do those things. Okay.
Mhm.
A chiropractor, maybe a therapist. Some families maybe it would make sense to have somebody like you on retainer to, when the family's running into issues, that they can call, right? And just have them there. I mean, these are all, yeah, I mean, there's lots of different areas to look at that, but I think having that budget then kind of puts it front of mind for us. Okay. And then it's not so much that we start beating ourselves up that we can't do these things, but then how do we solve this problem? Okay. And again, the more we solve it, the greater, it's interesting. You were mentioning my podcast, Your Business, Your Life. And the reason I came up with that is just in working with family businesses for 30 years, the thing I found is what happens in your business affects your life, and what happens in your life affects your business. Okay. So if we don't get this right, it's going to affect every aspect of our, every aspect of our life. So, again, by having this personal development budget that we have and start working on improving ourselves, all right, we start to see we got ourselves better, which then helps our businesses or careers get better, which then allow us to make more money, which then gives us more money to be able to invest more into our personal development. Because
Mhm.
personal development is an ongoing process. It's not something that ever ends. I mean, I was telling you, I just was at my business planning conference, and first full day is all mindset. All right. And I've been doing this for 13 years. And every time I identify, here's another little thing I got to tweak here. All right. Here's another, maybe it's in my belief system. Maybe it's in my values and my rules. Okay. Maybe my rules have changed, one of the big ones is, Maslow came out with, and Tony Robbins talks about this, about the six basic human needs. Okay. And what's our hierarchy there? Maybe we got to shift our hierarchy on it. If it's too self-serving, maybe we need to have something more from the spirit, like contribution and growth, and start to elevate those as part of our human needs. Any of these areas, but these are all little things that I think we continually need to work on. And even as we evolve and as we start to change, there's other things that become important too. So it's an ongoing process, is basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it is. And it's I do a lot of gardening metaphors. Not that I garden that much, to be honest, but just that nature and that fact. I mean, and just even looking outside my window right now and just seeing the leaves turning and shedding and then the birds moving around. I mean, we are natural beings and things are just it's just constantly shifting. It's the layers of the onion. And you
Yes.
peel back one and then, you realize you think, "Oh, and if you're earlier on in this process, you might think, "Oh, got that one nailed. Phew." But then the more you know, then the more you don't know kind of thing pops up,
Right.
right?
Right.
So the
Yes. Yep.
more
Yep.
personal development you do, then you're like, "Oh, look at that. Okay, well there's a layer. Okay, well there's like 100 more where that one came from." And you just
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
to you come to know that. And you're like, "Okay, got another peeled back. That means there's even more there. Okay, good. Juicy. This will be something else to experience later on in life." But now it doesn't scare me as much. It doesn't knock me down as much. I have a much faster recovery and resilience with these moments of these
Right.
I would say maybe more emotionally turbulent times.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, no, no. Go ahead. I wasn't sure if you were. Go
No,
ahead.
that's it. That was it. That was the thought.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I was the image that came to mind with that is when you take gold and you're looking to purify it. Okay, and what happens is you put it under intense heat, and what happens is the impurities start to bubble up. Okay. And I think that's what happens as we go through personal development. But the hotter we make the fire, sometimes the more the impurities, uh, deeper impurities come out. And I don't think it's anything that we ever completely solve. But if we accept that that's part of the process, we'll always be coming better. It will
Yes.
always be coming better. And that's what really this whole idea he's talking about of becoming the best version of yourself is really all about.
Yeah, and then that means feeling better
Yeah.
more of your days, more of the minutes of each day. Like that's I feel that should be our ultimate goal. And if we are feeling better, then we will help other people around us feel better, and we're going to make
Yep.
wiser decisions. And like it's the trickle effect, it's a domino effect. It just everything is better if we can make ourselves feel better. And I love your commitment to this in your life. It's so
Yeah.
powerful. It's so
Well, thank you. I
powerful.
appreciate that. One thing, and one thing I'd like to just briefly talk about, and this has really been huge for me, is this idea of morning power hour. And if you read the biographies of any successful person, whether it's in business, whether it's a religious person, no matter what, they always take that first hour of the day and give it to themselves. And it's time to kind of get themselves prepared and get their mindset right. Athletes. It's really, if you look at athletes, what do athletes do? Athletes have very regimented programs, and especially in the morning. I remember I was reading something on Novak Djokovic, and Novak Djokovic gets up in the morning and he does an hour worth of stretching. All right, and then after that, he hops on his bike and he's got a nature park that's down by his house, and he rides for like 2 hours just to get his head right. All right, then he gets back and then he eats. All right, puts good nutrition into his body, and then he goes out for his first practice of the day, and so he's got a very regimented schedule. But having that first hour of the day is critical to anybody's success, both personally and professionally, because we need to spend that time to get our heads right. And this is where a lot of this personal development comes in. And I think one of the things that's been really revolutionary for me, at least over the past couple months, is this idea of spending some time in silence. And there's, that's where we really, it's in the silence. And I think we're so afraid of silence. Okay. Because all of a sudden the little voices in our head can kind of speak, but the voices in our head will tell us a lot about what our mindset is like.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes we need to go into that, so then that we can start to do some of the work and we can start to realize what are some of the areas that are holding out. So, I mean, that's one thing that we've kind of, that I've, that my coach and I have started to do is really start that first hour of the day with 15 to 30 minutes just in silence. All right. And, and again, and then journaling after that, kind of what kind of was going through your head, what's, where am I, and then, kind of moving through. Then we can start doing some of the rewiring thing, like, what are our reframes, what are our goals, what are those type of things, what does our 10x vision look like, what's our year goals going to look like. And doing that first hour is really just kind of shot my business forward and my personal life too.
That's awesome. And I have found that not having a regimented schedule of like, well, I've got to do this first, then this many, and this many minutes, this da, 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 has been better for me personally. But to just have this
Mhm.
window of time, for me, it's even a couple hours to be honest. That is just
I am the same way.
it includes my coffee, my breakfast, my whatever, puttering to do that, and just taking my time with it and listening to a podcast or something that's usually really motivational or a spiritual bent or something. And that is part of my process. And I used to, years ago, I would just basically wake up and be at my desk before practically maybe bring my breakfast in with me,
Right. Oh,
maybe
worst thing you
before
can do.
still be in my pajamas. I mean, the whole thing. And it's like now I remember a few years back, it was kind of this fantasy dream of God, I would really like to not feel like I was really entered other people's worlds
Yep.
until like 10 a.m. Like
Yeah.
I want to take my time and be able to look outside and just so I didn't have a specific plan to make that happen, but it was such a powerful desire that it kept coming up for me. And slowly but surely over time, I created that reality where
Yeah.
I rarely have a call before 10 a.m. or I
Hmm.
rarely commit to anything before 10 a.m. There's a few exceptions, but it's very rare. And
Right.
it doesn't mean sometimes I'll be doing some work before 10, but a lot of times not. And that's such a change in pace for me, but I find I just feel better and it's making such a difference in my life. So anyway, that's a little bit about my morning, but
Right.
do you find that yours is a very regimented schedule? Does that support you or is it a not so much regimented? It's just things you try to kind of fit in there and
No, no, mine's very regimented. I
it
mean,
is.
so pretty much my morning ritual is it's non-negotiable. I mean, I get up at 5:30 in the morning. Usually I kind of spend like I'll kind of lay in bed and I'll do I kind of spend that little bit of silence, about 15 minutes. Um Silence, visualization, what is my 10x world going to look like? Um those type of things. And then I get up, I usually drink, I try to drink at least 24 ounces of water. All right, I drink a apple cider vinegar toddy, have that, and then I go down to my office, and that's where I'll review kind of my 10x vision, what's my goals for the year. Then I pretty much try to get some movement. I do stretching, and usually during that and that's usually about anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. And I'll usually listen to my coach will have like a morning video that he produces. So I'll listen to that while I'm doing my stretching. Then I look at my daily, my day's already been planned the day before. So then I look at my daily game plan. Here's how I'm scheduled. Here are the tasks that I want to get done. Okay. It's in my head. I go upstairs, I get dressed. Then I go to church. I spend the morning in adoration, in prayer, which is more of my kind of meditative, contemplative time. I do my journaling there, and then I just stay for 8 o'clock mass. That's usually done by about 8:30. But I get back home at 8:45. I'm in the office at 8:45, but I'm like you. I don't schedule appointments typically to about 10 o'clock. So I'm kind of working on, checking emails, any alerts, anything that maybe came up over the night that I didn't see, those type of things. And then, at 10, I might start engaging in client stuff. But even then, I typically try to keep the mornings more for creative work because that's when my high creative energy is. In the afternoon, that I usually take a break during the day, and that's where I eat lunch. I'll get my workout in, so I kind of got this little break in the middle of the day. And usually about 2, that's when a lot of times from 2 to it depends on the day. If I have West Coast clients, it can run as late as 8 o'clock. But for the most part, from 2 to 5, that's when I have client appointments because I find my energy starts to sap then, but I get re-energized talking to people. So
Mhm.
again, I try to use kind of my rhythms to my advantage also.
Yeah, that's
So that's
so
kind of the schedule.
important.
Yeah.
It's whatever works for you. I think that's what I want you all
Right.
as listening to grab
Mhm.
is that, whatever works for you, but to put some attention into that part of your day, especially the first part of your day, because it really
Right.
can set the tone for your whole day. So whatever it looks like for you, but something that really supports you in helping you feel the way you actually want to feel for most of your day. Because if you can start off your day accessing those feelings, then
Yeah.
you're going to have a better chance of being able to revisit them throughout the day.
Right.
And then you've put something in at lunch that helps you to kind of reconnect with that as well,
Right.
and these other things. I think that's really important. Um, yeah, I love this. I could talk to you forever. Uh,
We have a habit of doing that.
yeah, absolutely. But I will close with well, first of all, if people happen to know someone who, since your ideal clients are in the collision industry, if they happen to be that or know someone in that world, you're ideally looking for literally those collision shop owners, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. That's
Yeah.
pretty much what my niche is. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So if you know anyone like that, the next time you're taking your car in and you happen to, especially those shops where you happen to know the owner, you get to know the owner in any way, you just know that Matt's out there, might be worth an introduction. You can sense he's very committed to like a very holistic way of living. It's
Mhm.
not just about, you can imagine, it's easy for me to imagine how you take all of that we talked about today and you put it into your work in the sense of you are not going to be the type of person that is just all about the dollars and like, okay,
Mhm.
let's grow and plan the sale of your business, to be like the absolute max you can get, period, end of story. That's all you care. That is certainly not you, not from what I've
No.
gotten to know about you. And you
Oh,
take
no.
all of this in there, which means someone would be in amazing hands to work with you to grow and come up with an exit plan for their business,
Mm.
because you're going to care about the other facets of their life and figure out, do they want the top dollar or do they want a certain lifestyle and they want to figure out a
Mhm.
plan? Do they want to stay on it for, and working until they're 70 years old or not? Or,
Right.
all those things that are important, right?
Yeah, yeah, and well, and what's interesting is that as I start to work with clients, it's amazing how sometimes their goals change because they just didn't understand what the possibilities were. So, like one of my guys recently, we've been trying to work. We had two sons that were in the business. One was just not working out, but his younger son was, key guy was, and he couldn't figure out like because he was not taking the steps to truly exit as he said. And I really identified this and I said, this isn't what's important to you. I said, I think a redefinition of roles is what's important to you. And he's finally come to the realization that, you know, no, what I want to do is build culture. I want to build my people. I just don't want the day-to-day stuff. I have another guy I just started working with and wasn't sure what he wanted to do, had a key guy I'd like to sell the business to, but we don't know if he's capable or not. And so I said, well, let's just we'll go out and see what the third party market looks like. And so I brought him to one of my M&A people. She started going through the numbers, and I'm telling you, it's really appealing. It was really appealing. I mean, he could just in his lease payments on his property, he could get 25 to 30 grand a month. Okay. That's a pretty good income just on lease payments. But as we got talking, he said, he goes, yeah, that's neat, but I'd like my key people to have some skin in the game. I'd like them to reap some of the benefits. So whether they want to take over ownership or maybe we decide to sell and they have some equity in it that they can get some of the upside. He goes, that's what I'd really like. And so by taking into account what is truly important to them and helping sometimes to lead them. See, I'm really more of a coach than anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm a financial guy, but I tell this story, doing a financial plan or an exit plan is like a puzzle. You're just putting the pieces of the puzzle together. I can do that in my sleep. All right. But if you don't see the picture on the top of the box of what it's supposed to look like, it's really hard to put the picture together. So really that's what my role is to help them put the picture together. And then I can lead them to put the pieces of the puzzle together. But it's really
Mm-hmm.
coming down to what is most important to them. And I tell them all the time, look, I don't care what you do. I don't care if you sell it to a third party, whatever. I mean, the bottom line is, are you going to have, because I've seen too many guys who've sold their business and then a year later they have seller's remorse.
Oh, apparently there's
They're
a
sorry what they did.
stat. PricewaterhouseCoopers did
Yeah.
a study, and 3 out of 4 business owners regret their decision, profoundly
Mm-hmm.
regret it within a year. And which is
Right.
one of the reasons I've entered into the space and have been and even met you in the first place, and have been meeting more people in this world, because it's like, wow, that's like unacceptable. I mean, it just
Yeah.
because people, there's the fantasy of what that's going to be like, and they're not slowing down to think about what do they really want and what are they going after with that
Right.
exit. And it's easy to just get caught up in the, well, you can sell it and you can make this much money and then go off in the sunset, and you're like, well, yeah, I'm not a go off in the sunset kind of person. I want to actually stay on and do X, Y, and Z. That really would
Correct.
make me happy. And you're helping to
Yeah.
identify that, which is huge, so that
Yeah.
the majority of your clients are going to be in that smaller group, which is awesome. You're going to help
Right.
grow that of people who do not regret any of their decisions and they're still enjoying their life. That's
That's
super
it.
important.
Oh,
So
it's huge.
yeah, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal.
Mhm.
And so I always like to close with a quote. So I know you
Okay.
mentioned you have a few on your mind. So what's popping to mind now?
I think the biggest one is, you will become like the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And I think that's really critical. We've got to be careful who our associations we're with. We want to be around people that are going to uplift us, that are going to help us to grow, maybe sometimes make us uncomfortable, but
Hmm.
that's okay. So I think having a coach, like you, Charis, reading books, going to seminars, getting around like-minded people who want to grow. It's probably the most critical thing you can do in your personal development, because we do. If we worry about who our kids hang out with, why don't we worry about who we hang out with, right?
That's such a great point. And I want to clarify for you listening. If you're looking around and you're like, well, if I look at literally the people, like human beings that I'm literally around all the time, and you're thinking, well, that's not exactly going to elevate me, you can start with and go toward, like he just said, um, the books, the authors, the podcasts, the videos that you're consuming, the time you're spent
Correct.
scrolling social media. You can curate your feeds, unlike and stop following the things that are dragging you down or making you feel like irritated or annoyed or frustrated,
Yep.
or upset or depressed. I mean, yes, pay attention to what's going on in the world and do it in a way that does not bring you down with it, because then you're no good to
Right.
anyone. So like, I'm
Right.
not one to sit and watch. I'll have We will forward through the news to see some of the highlights, because not that's but I mainly like to skim over an email I get, because reading
Yep.
it doesn't upset me as much. But anyway, the whole idea of being able to curate the influences in your life. So those 5 people he mentioned can be can come in the forms of a podcast host, a coach, an author, you know, and then you can really drill into some of the feeds and things you're seeing, and you can take it to change all of these outward external influences and
Right.
elevate one, to start with one at a time, but you can elevate it all and it'll make such a difference.
Well, and I think also, you need to look at your personal relationships too.
Yeah,
And
it's
if you
just that
have people
sometimes.
in your life that drag you down, that's now again, if it's if it's somebody like a spouse, that's a little more difficult to do. And I would recommend trying to rectify that first. Okay. But, if you hang around with a bunch of buddies who all they want to do is hang out at the bar, go golfing all weekend and then hang out at the bar afterwards and not spend any time with their families, those might be associations that you want to eliminate. They
Absolutely.
might be
And if that
associations you want to eliminate.
because that's in your comfort zone right now, though, if that's terrifying you, or if you're like, oh my God, I can't stop,
Yeah.
if that makes you freak out, then go for the lower hanging fruit. That's
Right.
not such a big leap. And then know in the have in the back of your mind, though, and see if you can challenge yourself to change some of these actual physical relationships, whether it's people you see or people you talk with or people you're texting all the time, and lessen some of that. You can wait to respond to certain
Right.
people and not be the quick one to respond all the time. Wait till later in the
Right.
day. You can start to shift the dynamics of the relationship, and they're going to get their needs met elsewhere if you're not quite so accessible. If you know that that person is dragging you down, and I don't mean that like they're at a lower level than you and you're better than them. I
No,
don't mean
no,
that. It's
no,
just, but if
no.
they're literally dragging your energy down, if they're making you feel unworthy, if they're making you
Yep.
feel or make decisions that then compromise your sleep, compromise your health, whatever it is that you then can trace that is leading to a bigger challenge in your life, that is contributing on a regular basis to how you feel, then yes,
Yeah.
consider baby steps toward changing it if it sounds too
Mhm.
scary just to end something quickly. So you can
Correct.
go after low hanging fruit, but start
Yes.
doing it, start changing
Yeah.
those influences.
Yes.
Okay, Matt, so great to see you. So great to have you here. Fun to have a different perspective of someone that you've become immersed into this world, and yet truly by personal choice and the fact that you've become a junkie. I love that with it. And you see too, I mean, like you said, you've become a coach in your own right of how you help people.
Mm,
So all of this has, I mean, who would have thought that it would help someone who is in the financial planning space? But it
right.
does. It helps you. And that's just a reminder to all of you. It doesn't matter what you do in your profession.
Mhm.
The more work you do on yourself, the more you will help others in any role you have. That's a given.
Amen.
That's a given.
Amen. Yep.
Okay, everyone. Thank you again, Matt.
Oh,
We'll certainly stay in touch.
definitely, definitely. It's always a pleasure, Charis. I enjoy talking with you, and I think the message that you have for people is just so important. So I hope, if you're listening to this, and you have friends that can benefit from it, please feel free to forward it to them, because I think Charis just does great work and kind of gets it in this whole idea of mindset.
Thanks, Matt. Oh, and in the show notes, we'll have a link to his website. So again, anyone in the auto collision world, you want to share this episode with them, and they can get a taste for Matt and see what he thinks. And also check out his website. He has a complimentary consultation. And then
Hmm.
I'm also going to put in links to the podcast episodes where I was on your show, because
Yeah.
those were two great conversations we had. So I'll put those in the
Yeah.
show notes too for everyone to check out.
Sounds good.
Okay. Take care, everyone, and pay attention to those 5 people. And we'll see you next time. Bye.